Welcome everyone to today's webinar. Today we are going to be discussing lessons that we have learned from the Schneider Electric breaches. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things that we need to take care of. First is our agenda. Today I'm going to start by introducing you to our two speakers as well as a little bit about our company, what we do. The second is going to be getting into the Schneider Electric breaches themselves. We'll discuss all the different breaches that happened, how they happened, why they happened, and what the impact was of them. We'll get a little bit into Lunar, which is where we're going to show you a really, really cool investigation, but obviously we want you to see what the product is that you're actually going to be seeing. Then we'll investigate the breaches and do some lessons learned, and finally a short Q&A. A few general housekeeping items before we get started. The first, you are currently muted. However, this does not mean we don't want you to participate. If you have a question, please submit it via the Zoom app at any time. We keep an eye on our question and answer section throughout the webinar, and we will answer some of them during the webinar itself if it pertains to the subjects we're discussing. We will send you a recording of the webinar following the webinar, as well as audience participation in the chat is something we super encourage. We keep an eye on the chat as well. We'll often reference things that happen in the chat, so keep the conversation going. I am your host. I am Steve Berg. I am the VP Marketing here at Webs. And luckily with me here today, I have Yonatan Harari. Yonatan is one of the senior cyber analysts from our cyber team. He is an incredible talent, and I'm excited that we get to share the screen here today. So jumping into a little bit of who we are, Webs is the leading provider of deep, dark, and open web data. What that means is we go around the many, many faces and facets of the internet. We pull the unstructured information from there, and we structure it, enrich it, make sure the quality is incredibly high so that you can use it for whatever you need to, whether it's to plug into a software that you already have or to create a software product. So let's jump in. The Schneider Electric breaches. Okay, so we're going to jump into a little bit of a timeline, but first I want to jump into who is Schneider Electric. They're a French multinational company that manufacture energy products, automation products, really anything that ranges from household electrical components that you might find in a big box store like Walmart to the enterprise level industrial control and building automation products. They had about $28.5 billion in revenue throughout the first 9 months of 2023, and they employ over 150,000 people worldwide. They're going to release their full year financial results next month from 2023, but suffice it to say, this company is a target. They are huge, and they're going to be something that they're going to have data that attackers want. Now, they suffered a Cactus ransomware attack not long ago, right? January 2024. That led to the theft of their corporate data. So let's jump in and take a look at the timeline of what happened. So January 2024. Schneider Electric's Sustainability Business Division. God, that's hard to say. Try saying that 10 times fast. They get hit by a ransomware attack, right? The threat actors stole terabytes of corporate data. So what happens? You're a company, your customers are going to get angry that their data was stolen. But who are their customers, right? This isn't some small trivial company like we said before. They're quite a large company. Some of their customers, especially from their sustainability business division, include Allegiant Travel, Clorox, DHL, DuPont, Hilton, Lexmark, PepsiCo, Walmart, the biggest of the big. So they're down for a little bit from January 17th, January 31st. They get their business platforms back up and going, and they're back into a secure environment, right? Very important that when they restore their network, they're not just restoring it in a way where they're not, where it's not secure. On February 19th, so then we go January 29th, they publish their statement. On February 1st, they update their statement, just saying, hey, there's a little bit more information about the incident. Now we come to February. February is where things really start to come out. So Cactus ransomware group, it's linked to hunter killers. They start talking about the amount of data they've stolen. And it turns out it's about 1.5 terabytes of data, which included sensitive corporate data as well as customer data. That stolen data included critical information like accounting records, customer contracts, engineering drawings, even more so, PII of their employees. All of this data is fully disclosed on the Hunter Killers dark web website. We come to July. Hunter Killers decides, hey, it wasn't just enough what we announced that we took in February. They post on their Telegram channel. It's not just the sustainability business division. We've actually penetrated a significant number of the Schneider Electric products globally, including PowerLogic 7650, PowerLogic 8600, PowerLogic 8650, all of which are integral to the industrial control systems that are used across various sectors. Now, what's really cool, and what Jonathan is going to show you a little bit later, is actually the messages they sent and how he found them on the dark web using our dark web monitoring tool, Lunar. He's able to find the chatter about which products were compromised, the people from Hunter Killers bragging about their accomplishments on Telegram. Not only is it super cool for us to see like super obvious evidence of what they did, it's really important because it highlights the real world consequences of what these cyber attacks are having on critical infrastructure. It also gives you something to do if you know that you have one of the PowerLogic products, especially one of the ones we just named. And it gives you enough time, maybe if you haven't been compromised yet, to step back, remove them from your systems until you get the all clear. It's really, really, really important that enterprises, especially at the industrial level and in critical infrastructure, you have to prioritize the security of your control systems. It protects your operations, it protects your intellectual property, it protects your reputation, and it protects your customers. If you're an electric company who's running one of these boards and they're compromised, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who could be losing electricity because a control board was attacked. Let's get back into it. August, the group reports yet another successful breach, this time targeting their operations in Italy. They're talking about we've penetrated them yet again, along with Unitronics. Essentially, what we start learning is they've laterally moved everywhere across the infrastructure. This is absolutely much larger than initially thought. So we're going to do a short little poll now. I want to know how much you agree with the following statement. I, or the organization I defend, have been the victim of a publicly exposed data breach. We can give it a minute that you guys give your answers. Now, I'm not asking this because I want you to out yourself. It's an anonymous poll. But I want to know how much you're connecting to what we're talking about today. Is this something that concerns you? Is this something that you've been at an organization before where there's been a data breach? Okay, we'll give it another 10 seconds. We're going to close the poll. We'll show you the results soon, but we're going to save them for ourselves. So let's keep going. So who is Cactus? What is the Cactus ransomware group? Well, starting in March 2023, they actually started to gain access to these companies' corporate networks. Now, they started exploiting many different vulnerabilities. They purchased credentials on the dark web. They used backdoors and VPNs. They partnered with malware distributors and used phishing attacks. After the stealing of the data, they gained administrative privileges on the network. And then they encrypt their files and leave their ransom notes behind. Now, what's important to also know about Cactus, this isn't just about the encrypting of data. This isn't, ransomware of 5-10 years ago where, oh, we encrypt your data, we give you your private key, and then you go on your way. That's not what this is. This is a double extortion group. So they're going to encrypt a certain amount of your data. The rest of it, they're going to extract from your network. It's no longer yours. You're going to decrypt what you've paid your first ransom on, and then they're going to hit you with the second ransom. And they're going to say, hey, you want your data back, the stuff that we've taken off? That you're going to have to pay an extra little bit for. Now, who else have they targeted? We know they targeted Schneider Electric. That's the whole reason we're here today. But it hasn't just been Schneider Electric. There have been a few high-profile breaches that they've been a part of. Omnivision in 2023 discloses they had a data breach. Coop, a Swedish grocer, had to shut down 500 of their 800 stores because of the ransomware attack. These aren't just guys who hit. When they hit hard. So let's get into MITRE. right? It's one of my favorite tools for mapping out attacks. Let's talk about initial access. Initially, Cactus has been observed exploiting vulnerabilities in public-facing applications, right? Now, there was an attack, a report put out by Fox IT, it's part of Arctic Wolf, that, or I may have had that backwards, Arctic Wolf, which is part of Fox IT, that what they were specifically exploiting was ClickSense. And there were three different CVEs that they were exploiting. The first, and I can give you the numbers, but the numbers really matter less here. The first was known as double click. The second is zero click. Now, what's important about these is that combined, what they actually allowed Cactus to do is to create admin users that are completely unauthenticated within ClickSense, and then exploiting HTTP protocols. They're able to move that through into the active registry while using a VPN plus HTTP tunneling. Pulling that together, they're able to put unauthenticated users as admin users inside the active registry, which gives them pretty much complete control of your network. So they initially come in through the VPN and create an SSH backdoor. In this case, they also exploited ClickSense. I got to come back to this because just to show you how large this is, when the report came out and Fox IT looked at the number of servers from ClickSense, who, by the way, have fully denied this, to be completely clear. They've said there's no truth to this. But when Fox IT took a look at the number of servers, there are about 70%, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but there are about 70% of the servers contained all three vulnerabilities. So if you are a ClickSense customer, even though they have denied that this has been used, I highly recommend they have put out patches. Please go patch your systems. I beg of you. Okay, jumping back into the webinar. So they gained exploits, they exploited vulnerabilities in a VPN. There were some reports that it was a Fortinet VPN. No one has confirmed that either, but it was out there. Okay, so they're coming in with VPNs, they create this SSH backdoor. Then they use the command script interpreter as part of the execution, and they schedule tasks and jobs, right? It's a technique that's commonly used by the ransomware group. Like we discussed before, they're then escalating their privileges up to an admin, giving them complete access. They can go and change other admin passwords. They can restrict users and essentially took control of the network. They then attempted to impair your defenses, right? They attempted to uninstall the Sophos security software. That's pretty heavy software to uninstall. Now they started credential dumping. They're going within the system, pulling out credentials that they need, dumping them, and they are going from there. And then they start going through and discovering, okay, we're going everywhere where we need to go. And then in order to find which data we're going to be extracting, which data we're going to be ransoming, the whole 9 yards. And then we laterally move. Now, lateral movement is kind of this crazy technique. And I know we don't get into a lot. One of the reasons we don't get into a lot is because it's a really hard conversation as cybersecurity organizations for us to discuss. It's really hard to detect lateral movement, right? 1 second I'm on this machine, and then the next second I'm on this machine. It's that difficult to detect. And unless you have some of that dark web chatter data to where they're talking about, hey, I'm now on this computer, I was on this server, now I'm on this server, you're really not going to know that it's happened. They simply disappear and reappear. So they're essentially using SMB, RDP, and LDAP to move laterally. And then they encrypt the data on the systems and then exfiltrate data from the systems. Now, I want to talk about why we're here today. And a lot of this is because where we sit today is reactive. Okay, we have our tool set. We've got our firewalls, our NGAV, our XDRs, our SIEMs, our IAMs, our identity access management systems. I call them alert generators. Very few of them do active protection. What do they do? Hey, someone did something, you should go investigate it. That goes to a tier 1 analyst, goes into his backlog. Eventually he gets around to it. There's some risk score given by your SIEM, maybe by your SOAR, right? But it's pretty much around what's happened in the past. And then we move forward from there. However, and this is one of my single least favorite statistics, but in the Verizon Data Breach 2024 report, I remember there was a stat that said 2/3 of data breaches have no associated alert. That means with the $55 to $60 million being spent on security software at the average enterprise, 66% of the breaches that happen will not have an associated alert. So what are you getting if you are simply waiting for an alert to come to you and say, hey, there is a problem? You are waiting too long. Beyond the 260 days from IBM a few years back that it takes to even get to these alerts. If we're not looking at a proactive security approach, what you're looking at is a reactive approach, and you're waiting for people to come to you. With a tool like ours, and we're going to introduce the tool now before Yonatan shows it to you. You're looking at a proactive security approach, and what you need in there is a threat intelligence tool, a vulnerability management tool, and a risk assessment tool, all in one. And let me show you what that looks like. The goal here is for us to uncover the unknown threats. That's 66% of breaches that don't have an associated alert. We want to uncover them for you and accelerate the response. And it starts with intel gathering. Now, this is something that Lunar does. This is the Lunar threat detection lifecycle. Lunar does most of this automatically for you. We gather the intelligence and monitor the dark web for those emerging threats, those IOCs, all the time. The system then goes and proactively hunts and bring those signs of compromise within your network, or if you're an MSSP, within your client's network. Based on the parameters you've given us, we're constantly keeping an eye on it. Lunar does that for you automatically. It's kind of like your off-network agents. You have your on-network agents that are sitting and monitoring for you. We're doing the off-network side, the stuff that you're never going to see from your reactive software. We then give you early warning indicators. If there's a potential threat, compromised credentials or a mass of compromised credentials, if there's compromised admin credentials, if there's chatter associated with your compromised credentials, if there are CVEs to software that you have installed on your network that are being talked about by cyber criminals or by APT groups, we're going to give you warnings about them. Obviously, reducing that noise. We don't want to add into alert overload. We won't want to add to that. But we do want you to understand what is happening so that you can address it before it escalates into an attack. Then leveraging the insights given to you by Lunar, some of which might be, hey, here is the root path where the malware is currently sitting. You can actually develop and refine your incident response plans. And then once you've detected a threat, contain it. Because the intelligence that we're giving you is actionable. It's something that you can do something with so that you can expedite response efforts. And why does this bring something that is completely different to you? Number one, it's a shift. We're no longer responding. We're proactively taking action. We're actually shifting the emphasis away from I got an alert, let's respond to it, or let's bring it to the tier 2 and tier 3 to investigate and add another 2 months into the investigation period before we take action, to proactive threat hunting, proactive prevention. We're giving you those early warnings like we talked about before. We're giving you advanced warning of potential threats that allow for timely mitigation. We're giving you actionable intelligence. This isn't just, hey, let's add more into your system. You guys have plenty of more. You don't need more. What you need is something you can take action with. You need noise-free data, the likes of which that Webs over the last 8 years has become an expert at providing from the open, deep, and dark web. We're now taking it and giving it to you in a platform that we've built that's specifically built to reduce the noise. Giving you that actionable intelligence you can do something with so you can continuously improve the way you respond, to giving it a data-driven approach. Now, we talked about before about webs.io, and I want you to understand why a tool that comes from a data provider is so important. On a monthly level, we're capturing over 100 million compromised domain, 3 million compromised devices, 500,000 credit cards, 700,000 leaked IP addresses, just massive quantities of data, which we then filter down using our tool and our team of cyber analysts, of which Yonatan is one of our senior members, so that you can continuously monitor the dark web. You can deliver that actionable threat intelligence, reduce your alert fatigue, because we actually give you transparent risk scoring. It's not just, hey, this is high risk, but here's why it's high risk, so you can make informed decisions. Essentially, we empower your security team to focus on what matters the most, proactively addressing threats before they turn into something big.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. As Steve said, my name is Jonathan, and I'm a senior cyber analyst here at Webs. And in this part, we will begin by investigating a past ransomware attack on Schneider Electric and explore how we might have detected compromised employees' accounts early on using our Schneider logs data repository. Then we'll shift gears to discuss how to create proactive alerts to monitor real-time high-risk events related to this company. So let's open Lunar and dive in. Okay, let's begin by reviewing Schneider Electric domain in our domain risk dashboard. This will provide a solid starting point of our risk assessment and help us better plan how to approach the detailed investigation afterward. So we'll set the main domain of Schneider Electric and the time frame for the last year. The domain risk dashboard aggregates all relevant data for users to track domains, providing a holistic view of the risk associated with a specific domain, and in our case, with the domain of Schneider Electric over here. So in the top left, you can see the company risk. The risk is categorized as high, medium, or low, and we can track the domain risk over different time frames over here. In our case, we can see that the risk score is high. And if we click on CO, we can see the reasons why. For examples, over here, we can see that one or more leaked employee credentials were found in the past 2 weeks. In the dashboard, we can also see details about company-related compromised credentials. It includes the number of leaked employee emails, found in Stealer logs, leaked databases, and dark web data dumps. And clicking on the titles over here of those sections will open a new tab with the relevant posts that include those values. In the right part of the dashboard over here, we can see the summary of dark web mentions. It can help us identify trends and spikes related to the domain we are focusing on. We can also find mentions of over here of domains related to specific CVEs and specific tags. And in the right corner, we can see the pie chart of the top sources in which the domain is mentioned. So eventually we can click on over here on the export report, and it will automatically create a comprehensive report based on the data that can be found in this dashboard. Okay, now after we get a bigger picture now about the risk of the domain, we can move to search section to the search section over here in the left part to start a deeper investigation. Let's see, so let's move on. And to start our investigation, I actually want to find any evidence of potential breach of a specific company that I'm monitoring. And in this case, it's Schneider Electric. So to start, we run a broader discovery query to find any mention of the company Schneider Electric on the deep and the dark web. So I will share my screen. You will see the query that we prepared over here. So in this case, I will use a query containing the full name of the company with or without any other words between them. And of course, I will use the main domain as well. If I want to make it even broader, I can search for name variations, subdomains, executive names, and any other products related to the company. So in our query over here, we can see the full name of Schneider Electric, the main domain over here, and any mention of Schneider and Electric in the same post. So I will set the time frame for 1 year to give us enough data to analyze trends over time. And next, I will apply the site type filter to focus on results from ransomware blogs. And this helps us to zoom in on specific event and try to find indications for high-risk breaches related to Schneider Electric. And as you can see, there are only 2 results for this search, but they are exactly what we are looking for. Looking into the result, we can see posts published on Cactus ransomware gang site, where they shared around 1.5 terabyte of leaked data from Schneider Electric network. Now, we want to investigate what happened prior to the attack. I want to look for indicators that might teach us how the threat actors may gain the initial unauthorized access. Now, looking at the top sources pie chart, I can see that the leading source is the Russian market. To dig deeper, I will remove the site type filter and will focus on the peak in the time frame before the attack. And this is actually a great way to try to find out what was the initial unauthorized access to Schneider Electric network. We'll remove noisy results by clicking on the threat intelligence category, which will narrow down the total results from around 2,600 to 140 only. Now, looking at the top sources pie chart, I can see that the leading source is Russian market. This is a known dark web data store focused on selling Stealer logs data. And this insight leads us to investigate other Stealer log, our Stealer log repository. So I will run a query specifically looking for leaked credentials from Schneider Electric employee using the following query: PII domain employee, schneiderelectric.com. So using the PII domain employee filters, retrieve us email addresses or usernames of employees from Schneider Electric company that their endpoint devices got infected with InfoStealer malware. We blur the results for privacy, but we can look into the second result, which originally includes in the blur part the email address of employee from Schneider Electric who got infected. We can see that these employee credentials were leaked 3 different times around a month before the attack. Clicking on the first result, we can see some key fields that got leaked, like his username, password, his malware path, and hardware ID, which are very, very relevant for the mitigation process itself. Up until now, we have been investigating the attack that already happened, analyzing how we could have potentially detected the attack before it even happened by identifying some compromised accounts. But now, let's look at how we can create customized alerts to monitoring upcoming events. We'll return to the query library and rerun our broad discovery query, remove the threat intelligence category, set the time frame for 1 year, and this time we'll focus on Telegram as it's one of the top sources mentioned in the pie chart. One of the key results we can see is from hacktivism group called Hunter Killers, which is known to be associated with Cactus ransomware gang. And clicking view thread will retrieve us all posts from this Telegram channel. Now, instead of reading through everything, I will search specifically for Schneider Electric within the thread, and we'll go over some of the first results to get a bit more sense about the threat actor and to try to start profiling this threat actor. So I will sort the results by descending order to view the latest post, and the second post shows indications of attacks targeting specific headquarters, and we can see it over here. It's France, and scrolling further reveals posts detailing the components the attackers access, giving us a deeper insights into the extent of their compromise. Finally, to stay ahead of future threats, I will create an alert that will notify me via email every time there is a mention of Schneider Electric in Hunter Killer's Telegram channel. This is a crucial step in automating threat intelligence process and ensuring we are immediately aware of any potential risks targeting this company. So we'll set a name to the alert. Over here, we'll write Schneider Electric, click next, then set the frequency, enable the email notification, set priority to critical, and then that's it. Easily click done, and here we can see the alert itself. We can edit it, we can delete it, and that's all. Back to you, Steve.
Let's talk a little bit about the playbook that you would be using if you were to use a tool like Lunar. The first is we want you to uncover those unknown threats. Run that quick little search like Yonatan showed you to discover, track your breaches, your stolen data, any emerging threats to your company's assets, and set up an alert. Alerts feel like this small, tiny little thing, but in reality, this is exactly what gets Lunar going, because now we are monitoring for you. It's like an additional member to your team that is continuously monitoring the dark web to make sure that if anything that is pertinent to your organization or to one of your clients' organizations comes up, you are ready for it and you've got it in your system, ready to engage. The second is you want to identify that malicious activity. Investigate those high-risk threats. Look into the chatter. Identify the threats. Look if there's vulnerabilities that they're taking advantage of, that maybe patches, like with ClickSense, that you haven't actually put into place, and get it patched. Doing that might be as simple as stopping a full attack if you just patch and cut off their access. Essentially, the goal is for you to stay ahead of the next attack. And step 3 is neutralize those threats before they spread further. I know we like to use fancy little data like mitigate, remediate, neutralize it, stop it in its path. Take action to protect your domain, your digital assets, your employee data, your customer data, everything you've been entrusted with, to protect it from cyber criminal activity. Let's jump into lessons we actually learned from the Schneider Electric breaches. And number 1, automate your threat intelligence with custom alerts. You need to have alerts built into whatever tool you are using. That is the single most important thing. That is how you know what is actually going on. The second, your supply chain. It's something you need to be monitoring at all times, whether it's your shadow IT or your known IT. And we are actually developing tools to help you uncover what is in the shadow using some of our other data sources. But it's really important that you know what's on your system, understand what's being discussed by attackers, because those are going to be the most critical patches to apply. We want you to also monitor the dark web for companies that are associated with you. If you're working with a company, right, they may come with their ISO, with their SOC 2, and all the certifications. But if you go take a look in your dark web and you see, well, about 60% of their company has compromised credentials, you might want to work with another vendor, because that's where you're going to have another SolarWinds and you're going to get hit by it, because there's nothing that can be stopped if they've got admin credentials. Number 3, regularly audit your Active Registry for new users or admin users that have been changed. If you're doing regular audits and you're not just waiting, right, especially for known compromised credentials, but if you're doing regular audits of your Active Registry, so you know what it looked like before and what it looked like after, you've got track changes. If an unauthenticated user adds themselves to your Active Registry, you're going to know about it. 4, analyze events that led up to past attacks. One of the beautiful things about having a dark web monitoring tool, and with the research that's been done from MITRE, which is thousands of cybersecurity professionals, we kind of have the patterns all mapped out. We know how it starts, we know how it ends, at least amongst major APT groups and major crime groups. So if you see, hey, we're at step 5 and it's following a pattern that's a known pattern, you can jump ahead of it as much as you theoretically can. I know in reality it's a lot harder to actually implement, but at least it gives you where to look. And number 5, make sure you have offsite air-gapped backups of your data. Why? Well, it reduces the network downtime, like it says on the slide. Here's how. Cyber criminals are getting a hell of a lot smarter. Okay, they know when they know where to look. They know where your backups sit. If it's connected into your network, they're going to find it. And they're going to be patient about it, and they're going to find it. We know that attackers are willing to sit on networks for months, if not years, until they find everything, because it's as simple as they become ineffective. They don't get paid if you've got backups. So we need to pull it back, get the backups of the data. And the only way we can do that, you download it onto a secure hard drive, move it to an offsite location, put it 15 minutes away from your office. That this is a matter of closing the breach while the person runs to the offsite, grabs the hard drive, and brings it back. It sounds so low tech and it's so simple, but it can actually make a tremendous amount of difference. But you need to make sure that your backups are clean. If there's persistence built on your backups, you're just giving them access back to your network. So when you create your backups, make sure you're shutting down any persistence that may be left there. Now, thank you guys so much for attending today's webinar. I cannot tell you how much fun I had doing the research for this and how much I appreciate the incredible work of our team. Ari, who you guys don't see, she's working in the background, who put everything together on a technical level, and Jonathan, who did an incredible amount of work on Lunar to actually show you everything we found today. We're going to take a few questions at this time. We're going to go through the questions that have been put in the Zoom, and we will look forward to seeing you on the webinar recording and at our next webinar.